The vast starship ECS Horizon drifted through the golden clouds of Thalzara's atmosphere, like a silver arrow cutting through light. Its destination, the celestial court home of the Zarathi Empire, one of the most ancient and powerful civilizations in the galaxy. On board the ship stood Ambassador HumanMi Ren, a man in his early 30s with calm eyes and a posture that spoke of quiet discipline. He was not tall, nor particularly imposing, but there was something in the way he moved, a calm confidence, as if he had nothing to prove. The moment the ship entered the royal docking bay, hundreds of alien eyes watched. The Zarathi were tall, silver-skinned beings with elegant horns and eyes that glowed like sapphires. They were famous for their pride and their dislike for younger races. To them, humanity was a loud, short-lived species that had only recently learned to cross the stars. Michael knew all that, but he did not let it bother him. He had studied their culture, their customs, even their insults. He understood that arrogance was part of their history, and that patience was humanity's new weapon in a galaxy full of egos. The ship's doors opened with a soft hiss, and Michael stepped out onto the marble floor of the grand hall. The walls shimmered with crystal light, and giant banners floated above, symbols of Zarathi power. He was escorted by 2 royal guards, both wearing golden armor and expressions that made it clear they thought little of him. As he walked, he noticed how quiet the hall was. Thousands of nobles, soldiers, and officials had gathered to witness the humans' arrival. Some stared with curiosity, others with amusement. The air was filled with whispers. "Is that really a human? They look so fragile. Why send one so plain to meet our queen?" But Michael didn't react. He just kept walking. At the end of the hall, on a throne carved from a single piece of glowing crystal, sat Queen Aelrea of Thalzara. She was radiant, silver hair cascading like starlight, eyes the color of deep oceans. She was 33 by Zarathi years, young by their standards, but already known across the stars for her sharp mind and sharper tongue. As Michael approached, the court announcer's voice echoed, "Presenting Ambassador Michael Ren of Earth, representative of the human species seeking audience with Her Majesty, Queen Aelrea of the Zarathi Empire." Michael stopped a respectful distance away and bowed slightly. "Your Majesty," he said calmly, "it is an honor to be received in your court. Humanity thanks you for this opportunity." The Queen tilted her head, studying him. Her lips curved into a faint, amused smile. "So this is the human," she said softly. "The one sent to speak for your kind. How interesting." The court laughed politely, sensing her tone. Michael remained silent, his expression steady. "Tell me, human," Aelrea continued, her voice smooth like silver. "What is it your species wishes to gain? Power? Recognition? Or perhaps you seek our protection, like a child begging shelter from the storm?" The laughter grew louder. Michael met her gaze, calm as a still lake. "We seek only understanding, Your Majesty. Nothing more." Aelrea leaned forward slightly. "Understanding? Such a small word for such a small species." Another wave of laughter echoed across the hall. The Queen smiled, a slow, knowing smile, as if she enjoyed watching the human stay composed. She rose from her throne, her robes flowing like liquid light. "Tell me, Ambassador," she said, stepping closer. "How long has your kind been walking the stars?" "A century, too?" "Barely a century," Michael replied honestly. "And yet," she said, circling him like a predator observing its prey, "you come before ancient empires and speak as if you are our equal. Your people destroy their own world, fight among themselves, and then have the courage to lecture others about peace." Her words were sharp, meant to cut. The crowd murmured in approval. Michael listened in silence. "You humans," Aelrea said, "are a spark pretending to be a star. You think you shine, but one breath of the cosmos could extinguish you." The hall erupted with laughter. The sound rolled like thunder through the chamber. Michael stood perfectly still. His hands remained at his sides, his eyes unblinking. For a brief moment, Aelrea waited for a reaction. Anger, pride, anything. But the human simply looked at her, and there was something in his gaze she had not expected. Not fear, not submission. Just quiet disappointment, as if he had hoped for something greater from her and found it lacking. Then, without a single word, Michael bowed once more, low and deliberate, and turned his back to the Queen. The laughter stopped instantly. The guards shifted uncertainly. The court fell silent. Even the light seemed to dim. He began to walk step by step and toward the great doors of the hall. "Stop!" One of the guards shouted, raising his weapon. But Aelria lifted a hand. "Let him go," she said softly, her voice suddenly uncertain. Michael didn't look back. He just kept walking until the great doors opened, the sunlight from the alien sky spilling across the marble floor. He stepped through them, disappearing into the golden glow beyond. For several long seconds, no one moved. The silence was heavier than any words spoken that day. Then slowly the queen returned to her throne. Her expression had changed. There was no more laughter in her eyes, only thought. Her advisor, an elder Zarathi named Lord Valen, leaned close. "Your Majesty, he disrespected the crown," he whispered. "Shall we demand an apology?" Aelria didn't answer immediately. Her fingers tapped the arm of her throne. "No," she said finally. "That was not disrespect. That was something else," the court murmured, confused. "What do you mean, my queen?" Valen asked. She looked toward the doors where the human had vanished. "He did not leave in anger," she said quietly. "He left because he did not need to stay." That night, long after the court had emptied, Aelria sat alone in her private chambers. The stars of Thalzara shimmered outside her window, reflecting in her eyes. She replayed the scene in her mind, his silence, his steady gaze, his calm departure. She was a queen, used to command, used to power. She had made warriors kneel and scholars tremble, yet one quiet human had managed to unsettle her without saying a single word. She turned to her reflection in the mirror. "Why did he not answer me?" she whispered to herself. Why did he walk away? For the first time in many years, she felt something unfamiliar, a small, quiet doubt. Meanwhile, aboard the ECS Horizon, Michael sat in his quarters, staring out at the same stars. One of his officers, Lieutenant Aaron, stood beside him. "Sir," Aaron said carefully, "the Queen humiliated us. Why didn't you say something back? You could have defended humanity." Michael smiled faintly. "And what would that have changed?" "She insulted us, sir." "She only showed who she is," Michael replied. "Words don't change truth." "Dignity does," Aaron frowned. But everyone in that hall was laughing. "Yes," Michael said softly. "But they'll remember who stayed calm while they laughed. And so will she." He looked out the window again, watching the swirling colors of Thalzara's sky fade into deep space. "Sometimes," he said, "the most powerful message is the one left unsaid." By the next morning, across the vast networks of the galaxy, rumors began to spread. The human ambassador walked away from the Queen of Thalzara. He said nothing. He just left. No one could agree on what it meant. Some called it arrogance. Others called it wisdom. But one thing was certain. For the first time in galactic history, a human had made an empire pause. And that was only the beginning. The celestial court of Thalzara had not been this quiet in centuries. The day after the human ambassador walked away, no one dared to laugh or gossip loudly in the royal halls. The air itself seemed heavy, filled with questions that no one wanted to ask out loud. The queen, Elshria, sat on her crystal throne, her silver eyes fixed on the great doors through which the human had left. Around her, the nobles whispered nervously. Some called the human's act disrespectful. Others said it was courage beyond understanding. Her advisor, Lord Valen, broke the silence. "Your Majesty, I suggest we demand an explanation. No one leaves the throne without permission." "The human must be made to apologize," Aelria didn't answer. Her fingers rested under her chin, her thoughts far away. Finally, she said softly, "Tell me, Valen, did you see anger in his eyes?" Valen blinked. "No, Majesty." He looked calm. Too calm, perhaps. "Exactly," she murmured. "Not pride. Not fear, just calm." The nobles looked at one another in confusion. The Queen of Thalzara was known for her sharp judgment and her cold control. But now she seemed uncertain. Something no one had ever seen before. Meanwhile, far above the planet, the ECS Horizon drifted in silent orbit. Inside, the crew of the human embassy ship was in chaos. Lieutenant Aaron paced back and forth. "He walked away, sir." From the Queen. "The most powerful ruler in the galaxy." Across the table, Ambassador Michael Wren sat quietly, reviewing reports on his tablet. His calmness made the rest of the crew even more anxious. "She insulted humanity," Aaron continued, "and we just left? Do you know what the galactic news is saying? Michael looked up, his tone gentle. What are they saying? Aaron hesitated, pulling up a holographic screen. It flickered to life, showing dozens of alien commentators arguing in their respective languages. The human insulted the Queen. No, he was wise. He chose silence. He was afraid. He showed strength. The voices overlapped, chaotic and passionate. Michael smiled slightly. Then it seems, he said, that they can't decide what to think. That's good, Aaron frowned. Good? Sir, the galaxy thinks we're either brave or foolish. Michael stood and walked toward the window, looking out at the golden world below. Let them think, he said softly. Let them talk. Every word they speak is a sign that humanity is no longer invisible. Back in the celestial court, Queen Elria found herself restless. She tried to focus on royal duties, diplomatic meetings, trade agreements, council sessions, but her mind always returned to that silent human. She called for her scholar, Ilaran, one of the oldest and wisest Zarathi in the Empire. Tell me, Ilaran, she asked, what do we know about humans? The old scholar bowed. Little, my queen. They are a young species. Their planet is rich in water. Their lives are short, and they have only recently joined the interstellar community. They fight often among themselves, yet they are adaptable. Adaptable, she repeated. Yes. They survive things that would destroy others. Radiation, hunger, chaos, they endure. Many races admire their will to rebuild after every fall. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. Then why did this one walk away? Was it arrogance? Ilaran thought for a long moment before answering. Perhaps, Majesty. It was discipline, a kind we do not understand. The Queen leaned back on her throne. Discipline, she whispered. The word echoed in her mind. Days passed and the rumor spread faster than light. Across dozens of systems, aliens discussed the event that had shaken the pride of Thalzara. The story had already earned a name among the people. The human who walked away. On planets under Zarathi influence, some whispered the story as a joke, laughing at the Queen's embarrassment. On others, they spoke of it as a lesson, that perhaps humans had a strength that wasn't physical. News networks replayed the footage from the palace security systems again and again. Every frame of Michael Wren's calm face was studied. The moment he turned to leave was analyzed by diplomats and philosophers alike. A single human action had started what no weapon or speech ever could, a wave of curiosity. In the following council meeting, the Queen faced growing tension. Some members of the Zarathi High Council wanted to expel humanity from all alliances. Others wanted to investigate them more deeply. Lord Valen stood again, his tone stern. Your Majesty, silence can be more dangerous than words. The human may be planning something. They use calmness as a weapon. We should demand an apology, or show them their place. The Queen looked at him for a long moment. And what would that achieve? It would restore respect, Valen said firmly. Respect cannot be forced, she replied, her voice sharp now. It must be earned. The room fell silent, everyone stared at her, the same. Queen, who once demanded full obedience from all species, was now defending a human who had walked out on her. Elria stood and walked toward the window overlooking the shining city. Tell me, Valen, she said, her voice calm again. If we demand submission from every race, do we earn respect or fear? Valen said nothing. Fear fades, she continued softly. Respect endures. For the first time, the Queen's advisors had no answer. On the human ship, Michael continued his mission as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet he knew the effect of that silent act was spreading. Every morning he received encrypted messages from Earth's diplomatic command. Most were cautious, but one from the Secretary of the United Earth Council stood out. Whatever you did, it's working. Alien attention has shifted. Humanity is now a topic of respect, not ridicule. Proceed carefully. Michael smiled faintly as he read it. He didn't reply immediately. Instead, he recorded a short message to send back. Respect is not built by shouting, but by showing who we are. When he was done, he looked out again at Thalzara. He wondered if the Queen was thinking about him. And somehow, he knew she was. In the palace, that was exactly what she was doing. Late at night, when the stars shone across the city's crystal towers, Queen Elria walked alone through the royal gardens. Her reflection shimmered in the glassy pools of alien water. She had seen empires rise and fall, but never had she felt so unsettled by one simple act. Ilaran approached quietly. "Majesty," he said, "you seem troubled." The queen looked at him with a small smile. "Have you ever been insulted by silence, old friend?" The scholar chuckled. "Only by truth, my queen," she sighed softly. When he said nothing, it felt as if he held a mirror up to us. As if he showed me what arrogance truly looks like. Ilaran bowed his head. "Perhaps, Majesty, the universe sent him here not to ask for approval, but to remind us of humility." The queen smiled faintly. "Humility," she repeated. "A rare word in this palace." For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the alien night. Then, with quiet resolve, she turned back toward the palace. "Tomorrow," she said, "I want his file. Everything about this human. Where he came from, what he believes, how his people think." By morning, her command had spread across the Royal Intelligence Network. Dozens of analysts began collecting data about humanity. Their history, wars, art, culture, and achievements. The Queen read every report personally. She learned about Earth's long journey, the centuries of struggle, the rise and fall of nations, the rebuilding after disasters. She saw images of humans standing on their ruined planet and choosing to rebuild, again and again. When she reached a report describing Earth's philosophy, dignity even in defeat, she paused. For the first time, the proud Queen of Thalzara understood what had happened in that hall. The human hadn't left because he was weak or insulted. He left because he refused to play her game. He had shown strength through stillness, and that, she realized, was a kind of power even her empire didn't understand. That night, Queen Aelrea sent a private message through diplomatic channels to the ECS Horizon. The transmission was short. "Ambassador Michael Wren, the Queen of Thalzara invites you to a second audience, in peace." When Michael received the message, he read it twice, then smiled faintly. He didn't respond immediately. "Sir," Aaron said, watching him. "Are we going back to the palace?" Michael shook his head. "Not yet," he said quietly. "Some lessons take time to grow." He placed the message aside and returned to his reports. In the background, across 100 star systems, the story of the human who walked away continued to spread. But soon, another rumor began to rise, one even more surprising. The Queen of Thalzara has summoned the human again. The sun of Thalzara rose over the shining towers of the royal city. Light spread through the crystal walls of the palace, turning everything golden and calm. Yet inside the heart of the palace, Queen Aelrea felt anything but calm. She had been thinking of the human for days, the quiet man who had walked away from her throne without a single word. Every morning she told herself to forget him, but every night his image returned. His calm eyes, his silent bow, and that steady walk toward the great doors haunted her. It was strange. She had seen warriors tremble before her. She had watched kings kneel, begging for mercy. But that human had done neither. He had not feared her. He had not fought her. He had simply left. And somehow that act felt heavier than any insult she had ever received. The queen stood before her mirror, her long silver hair reflecting the morning light. Her attendant adjusted her robe, but she wasn't listening. Her thoughts were far away. "Your Majesty," said the attendant softly, "the council awaits you." Aelrea nodded and walked toward the council chamber. The Zarathi High Council was already assembled. 12 elders stood around a glowing table, discussing trade routes and border disputes. But as soon as she entered, silence fell. They all bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," said Lord Valen, "the matter of the human ambassador." "Enough," she interrupted gently. "We will not discuss punishments or apologies again. That matter is finished," Valen frowned. "But Majesty, the Empire's pride." "Our pride is not as fragile as your ego, Valen," she said coldly. The other counselors fell silent. Aelrea rarely spoke so sharply, but her tone ended the argument immediately. She walked to the head of the table. "Instead," she said, "we will study the humans. We will understand them." There were murmurs of confusion. "Study them?" one elder asked. "Why waste time on a primitive race?" "Because," the queen said softly, "they are not primitive. They are something else entirely." That night she dismissed her guards and entered the Hall of Records, a great chamber filled with glowing crystals that contained data from across the galaxy. She ordered the archivist to bring every report, image, and document ever collected about Earth and its people. For hours, she read. She saw images of the blue planet, the oceans, forests, and cities full of life. She watched records of their early space missions, their wars, their recoveries, their inventions. At first, she saw chaos, endless conflict and struggle. But then she began to notice something else. After every disaster, humans rebuilt. After every loss, they learned. One video showed a human city destroyed by war, and then rebuilt stronger than before. Another showed a human explorer standing on a barren moon, raising his planet's flag with quiet pride. Humans failed again and again, but never stayed down. Elria leaned back in her chair, staring at the flickering image of Earth's sunrise. They fall, she whispered, but they rise again, always. In the following days, she began to ask more questions. Her advisors were surprised. Tell me, she asked one of them, why do humans risk their lives for others? The advisor hesitated. Their culture values empathy, Majesty. They believe helping others gives meaning to life. Even strangers? She asked. Yes, Majesty. She nodded slowly. The concept felt both alien and beautiful. Meanwhile, aboard the ECS Horizon, Ambassador Michael Wren continued his quiet work. He received the Queen's invitation for a second audience, but he had not yet responded. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Aaron, entered his quarters with a worried look. Sir, the Queen is waiting for your reply. The message has been repeated 3 times now. Michael looked up from his reports. I know. Then why are we waiting? Should we not meet her again? Michael smiled faintly. Not yet. Let her curiosity grow a little more. Understanding doesn't come from one meeting. It grows when someone starts asking questions. Aaron tilted his head. You think she's asking questions? Michael looked out the window toward the planet below. I think she's doing much more than that. Back in the palace, Queen Aelria began spending long hours alone in her study. Her servants whispered that the Queen no longer smiled the same way. When she wasn't reading human history, she watched recordings of Michael Wren himself. The surveillance footage from the embassy ship had been classified, but she had access to everything. She watched how he spoke to his crew, not as a ruler, but as a leader who listened. When one of his engineers made a mistake, he didn't punish her. He taught her. When a guard disagreed with his orders, he didn't silence him. He discussed. The Queen had seen many rulers across the stars, but none who led like that. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar, respect. One evening, as she walked through the palace gardens, she found Alarin, her old scholar, waiting beside the crystal fountains. Majesty, he said kindly, you have not rested in days. She smiled slightly. Rest is for those without questions, Alarin. He nodded. And what question troubles you now? The Queen hesitated before answering. Why did he walk away? The scholar smiled softly. Perhaps, Majesty, because he wished to show you that silence can hold more truth than speech. Aelria sighed. You think it was wisdom? Not only wisdom, Alarin said. It was dignity. The kind that comes from knowing who you are, even when the world mocks you for it. The Queen looked at the stars. He did not defend his species, yet somehow he made me think about mine. Alarin bowed slightly. Then perhaps, my Queen, the human succeeded in his mission after all. The next day, the Queen summoned her personal guard captain. Prepare a diplomatic message, she said. I will speak directly to the human ambassador. The captain bowed. Yes, Majesty. Shall I prepare the court for another meeting? No, she said. This time, no throne, no crown, no audience. I will meet him alone. The captain looked shocked. Alone, Majesty? Yes. Sometimes truth cannot speak in a hall full of ears. When the message reached the ECS Horizon, Michael read it carefully. It wasn't an order. It wasn't even a command. It was a simple personal request from the Queen herself. I wish to understand your silence. Meet me in the gardens of starlight at dusk. Michael smiled. At last, he said quietly. She's ready to listen. Lieutenant Aaron frowned. Sir, it could be a trap. Michael shook his head. No. She's not the kind to trap what she doesn't understand. She's the kind who wants to see for herself. That evening, as the twin suns of Thalzara set behind the glowing towers, Michael walked through the gardens of starlight. The air was filled with golden pollen that shimmered like dust in sunlight. At the center of the garden, beside a glowing pond, stood Queen Aelria, without her crown, without guards, wearing a simple white robe. When she turned, her silver eyes met his. For a moment neither spoke. Finally she said quietly, "You made me question myself, human." Michael bowed slightly. Then my silence was not wasted. She smiled faintly. "Why did you walk away that day? You could have defended yourself. You could have spoken for your kind. Why say nothing?" Michael looked at the pond's reflection, the stars rippling across the water. "Because, Your Majesty," he said softly, "words were not needed. You would not have heard them. But silence makes people listen to themselves." Aelria was silent for a long time. Then she asked, "Did you hate me for what I said?" He shook his head. "No, hate is easy. Understanding takes patience." The Queen looked at him with new eyes. There was no arrogance in his tone, no pride, just truth. For the first time she felt the weight of her own words that day in the throne room. They had been meant to wound, but now they only made her feel small. "I misjudged your kind," she said softly. "I thought humans were impulsive, proud, and loud." Michael smiled faintly. "Sometimes we are, but not always. Sometimes we're quiet when it matters most." The Queen nodded slowly. "Then I owe you something, an apology." Michael shook his head. "You owe me nothing, Your Majesty. Understanding is enough." They stood there in silence as the stars brightened above the garden. The wind moved through the glowing leaves carrying a soft hum. At that moment the Queen realized something she had never known before, that true strength did not need to shout. It only needed to stand firm. Later that night, when she returned to the palace, her advisors noticed something had changed in her. Her voice was calmer, her eyes softer. Lord Valen approached cautiously. "Majesty, is the matter of the human settled?" The Queen looked out at the stars and said quietly, "No, Valen, it has only just begun." And far above the golden planet, on the human ship, Michael watched the same stars, feeling the first small bridge of understanding forming between two very different worlds. The next morning, the twin suns of Thalzara rose over the crystal towers, casting long golden rays across the palace gardens. Birds with shimmering feathers flew in precise patterns, and the soft hum of the city's machinery mingled with the whispers of wind. Yet, despite the beauty, the palace seemed quieter than usual. Queen Aelria walked through her private chambers, deep in thought. The events with the human ambassador Michael Wren had unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. His calm strength, his refusal to respond to her insult, and his quiet dignity had made her question everything she thought she knew about power. It was not weakness to walk away. It was control. She finally summoned her advisors and guards to her private audience room. "We will test the humans," she said firmly. The room froze. Lord Valen's voice trembled slightly. "Majesty? Test them, why? We have already insulted them." They walked away without resistance. "That alone is unusual." Aelria looked at him steadily. "That is exactly why we must test them. Let us see whether their strength is only calmness, or something more. Let them prove themselves in what in mind and heart and in courage." The council exchanged nervous glances. None had ever heard the Queen speak this way. None had ever suggested such a challenge. "Prepare the Trial of Empires," Aelria commanded. The Trial of Empires was legendary, a challenge designed to test any species' worthiness to join the Galactic Concord. It had 3 stages: moral judgment, mental strategy, and courage under pressure. No species had ever completed all 3. When the ECS Horizon received the message, Michael read it carefully. "Ambassador Michael Wren, your species is invited to participate in the Trial of Empires. Success will determine humanity's place among the galactic civilizations. Failure will not harm you, but it may shape how we see your kind." He folded the message and looked at Lieutenant Aaron. "Prepare the crew. We leave immediately," Aaron frowned. "Sir, do you know what the trials are?" Michael shook his head. "No, and that is the point. We go not to fight but to show who we are. That alone will be our strength." The first trial began within a massive simulation chamber, designed to test moral judgment. The human crew faced scenarios where they had to choose between self-interest and helping others. In one instance, a group of alien refugees were trapped in a collapsing habitat. The simulation offered Michael's team a safe escape, but leaving the aliens behind would guarantee their success in the trial. Michael looked at his crew. "We do what is right, not what is easy," he said calmly. The humans chose to rescue the aliens. The habitat trembled and cracked, yet through coordination and courage, they saved everyone. The simulation ended with a message. Stage 1 complete. Moral judgment, exemplary. Even the Zarathi observers were impressed. They whispered among themselves. A human species that chose empathy over self-interest? Unheard of. The second trial tested intelligence and strategy. A massive holographic map of star systems appeared, riddled with anomalies and challenges. The task: unite fractured civilizations through diplomacy, logic, and foresight. Many species had failed this trial because they relied on force or coercion. But Michael's team studied the situation carefully. They communicated with each holographic species respectfully, finding solutions that balanced everyone's interests. Hours passed. Mistakes were made, but each time they adapted, learning from failures. Finally, the simulation recognized their strategy. Stage 2 complete. Mental acuity and diplomacy exceptional. The Zarathi watchers leaned forward in astonishment. These humans were not reckless. They thought deeply, yet acted boldly when needed. The third and final trial tested courage under pressure. Participants faced a simulated disaster, a massive asteroid threatening a populated world. The trial demanded a human life be sacrificed to save millions of alien lives. The human crew hesitated. Michael's calm voice guided them. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act despite it. Michael volunteered to take the greatest risk, knowing the simulation measured intent as much as action. His crew followed his plan with precision, diverting the asteroid and saving the planet. When the simulation ended, a loud chime echoed through the chamber. Trial complete. Humanity has passed all stages. Worthiness confirmed. The Zarathi court was silent. The Queen herself, observing remotely, felt a mix of astonishment and unease. Back in the palace, Aelria walked alone in the Hall of Reflections. The walls mirrored her image endlessly, and she stopped before one mirror. They walk, they think, they lead, she whispered. They endure, yet they do not boast.
How can a young species do this?
Ilarin, her scholar, appeared at her side. Majesty, perhaps it is because humans have seen the worst of life and chose to rise anyway. She nodded slowly. Perhaps. And yet I feel challenged. For the first time in my life, I do not know if I am the strongest in this hall. That thought is uncomfortable, Ilarin smiled. And that is precisely why we must respect them. Strength comes in many forms. Meanwhile, Michael and his crew celebrated quietly on the ECS horizon. They were not loud or boastful. Their satisfaction came from knowing they had done what was right. Aaron looked around the room. Sir, we did it. We passed the trial of empires. Do you realize what this means? Michael nodded. I do, but it is not victory. It is a beginning. The galaxy will now watch us closely. Our actions from now on will define humanity's place. Do you think the Queen will respect us now? Aaron asked. Michael smiled faintly. Respect is earned through actions, not words. We have earned it by being ourselves. The Queen, however, was already thinking beyond respect. She sent a private message to Michael Wren. Ambassador, you have proven much. Yet there is more to your people I wish to understand. Meet me in the gardens of starlight at twilight. Alone. Michael read the message quietly, then looked at his crew. Prepare for diplomacy, he said. But remember, the real test is how we act, not what we say. The crew nodded. They understood. Humanity's strength was not in weapons, politics, or power. It was in dignity, courage, and honor. As twilight approached, Michael entered the gardens of starlight once again. The golden pollen drifted lazily in the air, glowing like tiny stars. Aelria was already there, standing near the pond that reflected the twin suns. This time the Queen did not wear her royal robes. She wore a simple gown, her silver hair loose. Her eyes met his, no longer sharp with pride, but curious and respectful. Ambassador Wren, she said quietly, your people have passed the trial of empires. You have shown moral strength, wisdom, and courage beyond my expectations. I did not believe humans could do this. Michael bowed politely. Thank you, Your Majesty. But it was not about expectations. It was about who we are. She stepped closer. You have shown me something I have never understood. Humility and strength, courage and calmness, and patience in action. I misjudged your kind, he smiled faintly. Then our silence and our choices were not wasted. Actions speak louder than words. The Queen nodded slowly. Indeed, perhaps I have underestimated humanity for too long. Perhaps the galaxy has. They both looked at the pond. The water reflected the stars and the golden light of Thalzara, a symbol of new beginnings. You have earned a place among the stars, the Queen said softly. Not because of weapons or power, but because of your dignity. Michael's smile was calm, almost serene. Then we will continue to live up to that dignity. Not just for ourselves, but for all who watch. The Queen studied him silently, understanding that her empire had encountered something rare and remarkable. Humans who could lead by example, not fear. That night, Elria returned to her palace with a quiet determination. She had been proud, sharp, and unchallenged for decades. Now for the first time she felt a new kind of admiration, and a deep curiosity about the species that could inspire it. Across the stars, the ECS Horizon drifted in orbit, carrying humanity's quiet ambassadors. They were not boastful, not loud, not arrogant. Yet in every corner of the galaxy, their actions had begun to reshape how the young species was seen. And for Michael Wren, the human who walked away without a word, the journey had only just begun. The twin suns of Thalzara set slowly over the crystal towers, painting the sky with gold, orange, and violet. The light reflected off the palace walls and the flowing gardens, casting long shadows. For the first time in decades, the palace felt alive in a different way, not with power, but with quiet respect. Queen Elria walked through the gardens of starlight, thinking about the human ambassador, Michael Wren. The trials had ended and humanity had proven its worth. But proving worth was not the same as understanding. She stopped by the glowing pond where they had first met in private. The water reflected the stars and the distant city lights. She remembered his calm expression, his quiet dignity, the way he had walked away from her insult without a single word. He didn't just prove strength, she whispered. He proved something I did not know humans could have: patience, wisdom, and honor. Her attendant approached cautiously. Majesty, the council awaits your decision regarding the humans. Illyria nodded slowly. Prepare the court. Today, humanity will be recognized, not as a young species, but as equals in the galactic conquered. Inside the grand hall, the nobles and councilors gathered. They whispered nervously. Some still doubted the humans. Others were curious to see how the Queen would acknowledge them. Elria entered quietly without the usual fanfare. Her silver eyes scanned the room. When she spoke, her voice was steady and calm, carrying a new kind of authority. Today, she said, we honor a species that has shown the galaxy what courage, wisdom, and dignity mean. Humanity has faced challenges not with arrogance or pride, but with humility and perseverance. They have passed the trial of empires, something no other species has accomplished. The hall was silent. Even the most skeptical counselors looked astonished. Therefore, she continued, I formally recognize humanity as a member of the Galactic Concord, not because of their strength, not because of their weapons, but because of their honor. The court erupted in whispers, some in awe, some in disbelief. For centuries, no species had ever impressed the Queen like this. On board the ECS Horizon, Michael Wren received the announcement. His crew gathered around the communication screen, their faces glowing with pride and excitement. Lieutenant Aaron spoke first. Sir, did you see that? Humanity has been officially recognized. Michael nodded calmly. Yes, but recognition is not the end. It is a responsibility. We must show the galaxy who we are, not just through trials, but in every action we take. Do you think the Queen respects us now? Aaron asked. Michael smiled faintly. Respect is not given. It is earned. And we have earned it by being ourselves. The crew understood. Humanity's strength was not in words or threats, but in their choices. Their courage, dignity, and patience back on Thalzara. Queen Elria prepared for a private audience with Michael Wren. This time, it was not about diplomacy or power. It was about understanding. When Michael arrived at the Gardens of Starlight, he was surprised to see the Queen alone, standing by the glowing pond. She did not wear her crown. Her robe was simple and her posture calm. Ambassador Wren, she said quietly, you have shown me much about your people, and about my own empire. I misjudged humans. I believed they were weak, reckless, and loud. But they are patient, courageous, and wise. They are remarkable. Michael bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Majesty. But it was not about impressing anyone. We acted as humans should and with honor and dignity. Elria studied him closely. And yet your actions have inspired me and my empire. I have learned more from your silence than from any speech I have ever heard in this hall. Michael smiled faintly. Then our mission is complete, the Queen nodded. There is one thing I must ask. Michael raised an eyebrow. What is that? Why did you walk away that day? You could have spoken, defended your people, even argued. Why leave in silence? He looked at the pond's reflection. The stars shimmered across the water, mirrored perfectly. Because, he said softly, words are often wasted on those who do not listen. I wanted you to see it, not me, but humanity itself. To understand our dignity, our choices, and our patience, silence can speak louder than words. Elria was quiet. For the first time, she felt a humility that was unfamiliar. Not fear, not weakness, but respect. You have changed my view of your people, she said finally. And in doing so, you have changed mine of this empire. You have reminded me what true strength is. Michael nodded. Strength is not measured by power or weapons. It is measured by character and choices. The Queen smiled faintly, her expression softening. Then humanity has truly earned its place among the stars. The news of humanity's recognition spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Other species began to look at humans differently. No longer were they a young, reckless race. They were dignified, patient, and strong, a species to be respected, studied, and admired. On distant worlds, scholars debated humanity's quiet power. Military leaders reconsidered their assumptions. Traders, diplomats, and explorers watched closely, realizing that humans had a rare combination of courage, morality, and intelligence, and through it all, Michael Wren and his crew continued their work with quiet pride. They did not boast or demand recognition. They simply acted as humans should, with dignity, patience, and courage. In the palace, Queen Elria reflected on the events. For decades, she had ruled with pride, authority, and sharp words. She had believed that strength came from fear and command. But the human ambassador had taught her something new. Strength could also come from calmness, silence, and honor. She thought of the day he walked away from her throne. That single act had shaken the empire more than any battle or speech ever could. It had inspired reflection, curiosity, and respect. Perhaps, she whispered, this is what it means to lead wisely, to recognize strength where it is least expected. Meanwhile, the ECS Horizon prepared to leave orbit around Thalzara. Michael stood on the observation deck looking at the glowing planet below. The golden city, the crystal towers, and the serene gardens seemed to shimmer with a new energy. Aaron joined him. Sir, do you think the Queen truly understands us now? Michael smiled faintly. Yes, she understands what humanity can be. And that understanding will grow. One day perhaps the galaxy will too. The ship's engines hummed softly. Slowly it began to rise, leaving the atmosphere behind. The stars stretched infinitely ahead, the same stars that humans had gazed at for centuries. Michael placed his hand on the railing, feeling a quiet pride. Not for himself, not for fame, but for his species. Humanity had faced the galaxy's judgment and proved itself through actions, not words. We came to this court to show who we are, he said quietly. Not to fight, not to boast. Just to remind the universe what being human means. Aaron nodded. And we did, sir. More than anyone could have imagined. Back on Thalzara, Queen Elria returned to her throne, her silver eyes calm and thoughtful. The Empire was stronger for the lesson she had learned. Humans were not just another young species. They were a mirror, reflecting patience, courage, and dignity back at her. She realized that the galaxy would be different now. Not because humans were the most powerful in technology or weapons, but because they were a species that could inspire even the proudest of empires through quiet strength. And somewhere, in the distance across countless star systems, the story of the human ambassador who walked away without a word began to be told, not as a tale of insult or defiance, but as a story of humility, courage, and the power of dignity. The stars stretched endlessly before them. The human ship moved steadily onward, carrying the quiet pride of Earth's species. And somewhere in the palace of Thalzara, a young queen thought about that one calm human, realizing that the galaxy had just witnessed the rise of something extraordinary, the true potential of humanity. For Michael Wren, the journey had only begun. But already the universe had begun to notice. Some words are not spoken. Some lessons are not taught. Some strength is simply shown, and in that truth humanity shone brighter than ever.